Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's the Carolina Panthers, my number 22 team. A little bit of housekeeping here at the top, guys. I appreciate everyone who comes in and watches these videos. I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate all the likes, all the viewpoints and everything like that. However, and some people have learned this the hard way in previous videos, sometimes I am in a F around and find out mood, and hostility will be met with hostility. So if a guy who is, for example, like 99th in pass rush win percentage, and I say he isn't good, and you want to tell me that he is, I'm probably going to be upset about it, and especially if you tell me that I didn't do my research beforehand. So, but let's keep this all fun. I wanted this to be fun. I did some pretty extensive research on the Carolina Panthers coming in this year, and I only say this, I feel like this is the appropriate video because 2 years ago I was labeled Carolina Panther hater, basically number one. I thought Frank Reich was going to be a terrible head coach. I thought their defense was going to stink. I thought their offensive line had a lot of work that had to be done on it, and I was told that I didn't know what I was talking about. The head coaching staff was one of the best in the league, and we all know how that went. So with that said, I'm a lot more optimistic about this Carolina Panthers team than I was 2 years ago. I gotta say that Dave Canales, though he's not gonna be ranked very high for me, that I feel like he made the gutsiest move any coach made last year when he benched Bryce Young temporarily just to give him time to sort of reset. And he did reset mentally. He came out and he played every bit like you would expect a number one overall quarterback to play a couple years into his career. He was great. They invested in the weapons group, getting Ted McMillan. No word yet on his dietary preferences, but raccoon eating Xavier Legette is in desperate need of having to bounce back from what was a very quiet rookie season. Had a little bit of flashes, but was really outshined by Jalen Coker in particular. Adam Thielen is still there. You'll see how much he gets worked into this offense or gets worked out of the offense as they work in some of the younger pieces that they have. Chuba Hubbard emerged as one of the best running backs in the entire league behind an offensive line that showed grit, that showed depth, that showed resiliency, and just really worked really hard to make that offense run. The issue that I have with Carolina for the most part this year, and you're going to see it in this video, is the defense. I think Ejiro Evero is a defensive coordinator. I've been saying it for 3 years now, is the most overrated defensive coordinator in the entire league. I don't get it. I don't understand how he remains employed. I understand there's some talent kind of on this defense. You know, Derek Brown is a really great player. Then there's just other guys who I just feel are kind of overrated, like J.C. Horn. We'll get to that. And it's a defense that's lacking a lot of talent, and the true test of a great defensive coordinator is how well they do. Now, I understand from a statistical standpoint, Carolina actually ranked pretty well from a statistical, like a box score, like the most basic defensive statistics, last year. So I know I'm going to get people in the comment section talking about that. And to that, I just got to say, there's definitely a lot more nuance, especially when a team finishes as a bottom 10, bottom 8 team or wherever it was for them, that sometimes there's going to be some outliers, particularly maybe on the defensive side of the ball with one particular aspect, because everyone knows in the NFL, if teams go up big early, they generally shut her down and they just try to run the clock out and end that game. And I do feel like the Carolina Panthers the last couple of years have been absolutely products of that with some of their defensive output, because from a player performance standpoint, there hasn't really been all that shine outside of, like, again, 1, 2, maybe 3 players at a time throughout the season, and we'll get to some of those guys coming up here. But the test is, can Dave Canales take that step forward? And as we get into the coaching grades here, you can see the 73 grade and 27th overall ranking for Dave Canales. Again, it has there's a mixed bag here, and I'm going to include Brad Idzik, the offensive coordinator, in this mixed bag because they're both the offensive coaches really at the end of the day. I do like that Idzik gives Canales balance and continuity. They've been together for a while. And Idzik is an experienced wide receivers coach. I think that's why you saw Jalen Coker do really well. Like, he sort of broke out. Idzik's got that experience of being able to bring that out of the wide receiver talent, and being given Ted McMillan now to work with, and of course Xavier Leggett from last year as well. I expect there to be some significant developments throughout the season of that wide receiver group, and of course, Idzik as the coordinator, his job is really just to keep Dave Canales level, really, because Canales, his focus is going to be more on the offense, and he does come down to 27th, just because I think from a CEO perspective, that CEO aspect of what being a head coach is, I think Canales still is falling short of that. Now, he's a very young guy, doesn't have a lot of experience being, even a high-level coordinator for multiple years. He progressed very rapidly in his ascent to being a head coach. It was a very risky long-term investment by the Panthers front office to bring him in. I think what you saw, like I said in the intro, the gutsiness to bench Bryce Young when he did, and then to not just completely write him off either, and to put him back in, give him a second opportunity after you've sort of calmed him down mentally. I think that was a really great move for Canales, and it showed a lot of it showed true quality head coaching qualities. For the lack of trying to sound redundant here with my lack of vocabulary, apparently. But there is still some decisions that have been made. I think that in terms on the defensive side, it's sort of showing that he may be lacking in that department and just not ready for the head coaching responsibilities from that perspective. So it's kind of hard to put him up, to rank him higher than this. I think that he is sort of just like his current quarterback, Bryce Young, where you're getting time to develop here. This team was really in a down period, so I think Canales has shown enough that unless this team completely falls apart this year, that he's going to remain in power. He's not really a hot seat coach at all, which is hard to be said for a lot of coaches that would fall in this like bottom tier so far head coach. But he's like the budding, if you had like a projection to go accelerate up by the end of the year, I think he'd be a real good candidate for that. But the defensive side is a huge issue, and I think keeping Ejiro Evero in was more of a keeping the fan base happy, keeping some of the veteran players that were on the team that he inherited happy. I just never have seen it with him. He's my 24th ranked defensive coordinator. I noticed that in the intro I said that last year was a good statistical output. I meant the year prior with Ejiro Evero, where the Panthers had looked pretty good statistically. Last year they were horrific. Now Derek Brown was out. I understand that, but just the lack of being able to, plug the hole in the ship, so to speak, that Evero showed he just wasn't able to do last year. And they got pretty much run over for a lot of the season, and the offense luckily was able to pick it up, and they had some really good performances, kept them in a lot of games, forcing some mistakes from the opposing defense, setting them back. They set up that defense to succeed a lot more than what the defense actually succeeded, if that makes sense. They didn't take advantage of a lot of the opportunities they were given in a lot of instances. Now, Dom Capers is there. He's sort of just this veteran assistant defensive coordinator role on this team. I would like to see him maybe have a little bit more influence. I think Dom Capers is an all-timer in terms of defensive coaching. But if you're going to go with Evero, I think you got to just take the good with the bad. And unfortunately, with the complete lack of personnel, I don't know. I don't know. I guess keeping Evero, knowing that you weren't going to have this huge, significant, positive turnover in personnel on the defensive side of the ball. There was really no sign that that was even a goal of theirs outside of taking 2 young pass rushers in the second and third round. I believe it was the second and third round. They didn't really invest in the cornerback class. They didn't really invest in the linebacker class, the interior defensive line class. Like, they didn't seem all that interested in improving the defense that was already ranked pretty low in terms of talent level. And I don't know if that was a Dave Canales decision, how much influence Dave Canales has over personnel signings, or if it's just if the general manager has more power, how much of a collaborative effort is that? I do wonder. It would almost make me lean towards that Canales has a little bit more of an influence, because they made a lot of offensive investments again this year, which, I mean, you could expect it. They want to build around Bryce Young, but I think just the lack of attention, they're kind of setting Evero up to fail almost, more so than he already has, in my opinion. And I think that this is unless there's a drastic turnaround and there's a significant change in how they strategize week to week, drive to drive, quarter to quarter throughout the season, then this should be Evero's last year as a defensive coordinator here, and they should be looking to upgrade that group. I don't know if there's anyone really within the organization they can do that with. You know, there could be a situation that pops up, like, who knows, like what we just covered with Chicago, where Dennis Allen came available to be a defensive coordinator. Maybe that's something that Carolina will have to consider, because I just don't know, fair or not, you know, I don't think people pay all that close attention when it comes to a coordinator, when it comes to just a lack of personnel and they just completely can't perform. I don't know that they necessarily blame the players on that. It's the coach's job to coach them up. And I think when Mike Tomlin, the Steelers coach, said that he notices that a lot of coaches shy away from the coaching aspect, they kind of just want guys and they want players, and they don't want to have to develop them and teach them a whole lot. Evero's in the exact position right now where he needs to do that. So this is going to be a true test of what his true coaching ability is, because he's getting a lot of just raw, underdeveloped, you know, these moldable clays almost that are not molded perfectly yet at all. You know, Prince Amunalayan, if that's how you say his name, there's a lot of syllables there. Nick Scorton, for example, like those two guys. He still has J.C. Horn out there who, you know, has flashed, has had some injury issues, has, you know, been boom or bust for most of his career now. How do you take that and make him see his full potential? There's a lot of that going around. There's Shao Smith-Wade. There's Lathan Ransom, who they just brought in as well. I think he's going to get some playing time out there. This is Evero's test, and I don't know that if you don't see significant development, he's not going to be around. I don't know. Panther fans are going to say I'm a hater of this defense and Evero, and maybe it's the carryover from that Frank Reich staff that I just, to this day, despise. You know, listen, I was right about everyone else on that staff. Why wouldn't I be right about Evero, guys? I'm just going to say that out loud. But maybe he utilizes the position coaches a lot better this year. He's got to change something about how he's gone about it. I don't know how much influence assistant coaches have had on the defense last year and the year before that. That's really only a question that I think internally is what they would know truly. And I think that if they can change that, then we could see improvements. If they don't change it, then this team is not going to succeed as much as they should or could, just because the defense is going to drag down this offense. Because the offensive staff, I think, is pretty, you know, they're in a good position. So again, a middle of the pack offensive staff, smack dab in the middle, actually. But a young, inexperienced one, the higher you go up the ladder. So as they sort of come up together, I wonder if they're not operating completely at their floor right now, if they're only going to be better than they are now. I don't know that you can say the same thing about the defensive coaches. Seeing that you made it this far and you can see that I'm not quite the Carolina Panther hater you thought I was, this is the time for the ad break, but I don't have any ads. So make sure to hit the thumbs up on this video, leave your comment in the comment section, push this video out in the algorithms, get me much more viewers, much more subscribers, and then this may actually be a real ad break. So let's get back to the video if I can stop wasting your time with this BS. So here's Bryce Young. He coming into this season with an 88 grade for me. That's 11th to 13th in the league. I sort of changed it up a little bit. I wanted to be able to show you guys because I was just doing like tied for 11th, and it's hard to tell like how many guys I had tied at that position. So now this is a way you guys can see how many guys are tied with the same grade. So I got 3 quarterbacks that came in with an 88 grade. Bryce Young, he showed a lot of mental toughness. He showed a tremendous intangible quality last year that you want your quarterback to have, and that is being able to put the crap behind him and move forward like it doesn't exist, and not let it conquer him mentally, not let it stop him from performing in games week to week, in the film room. He showed a tremendous work ethic to get better between the ears, which then translated to him performing much better on the actual field in games. And that was through the benching, where they put in Andy Dalton, who Andy Dalton's always been this like high floor quarterback, not necessarily a high ceiling whatsoever, but always been a high floor quarterback. He was a safe option, and it was a safe option just so they can keep functioning as an offense while Bryce Young settled it down, and they were able to see if he could have some of these bad habits coached out of him. And he did a fantastic job in the second half of the season. For those first couple games that he played before his benching, I would have had Bryce Young as one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. He was as bad as you can get. He couldn't make a good decision. He was putting the ball in harm's way. He was holding onto the ball too long when he wasn't putting the ball in the harm's way. He was not really trusting his offensive line all that much when he should have been. He was checking the ball down all too much. It was a very inconsistent mental game from Bryce Young. But I think after he was able to sit down and go through the film and really get an outsider's almost perspective of his own team, we saw drastic changes in there. And that's where the statistical output really started to become positive for him. When he was kept clean, he came back and he was as good as you could expect a quarterback to be when he's not under pressure. His deep ball performed way better than it ever had in his career. He executed the intermediate routes really well. Now the short routes, that's always going to be an issue for him because of his size. That's a really tough place for a smaller quarterback to operate, is in the short areas. It's almost ironic that it's better for these smaller quarterbacks to be able to push the ball deep down the field rather than operate in the short, because they're having to look over linemen who are 6 to 7 inches taller than him. That's tough to do if you're only trying to look 5 to 7 yards in front of you. But when you have the trajectory of looking 20, 30 yards down the field and able to put your eyes there, it's a lot easier to see where you're going to be going with the ball. So I expect that to be a trend for Bryce Young for the rest of his career, is to have that sort of progression of quality from deep ball down to short. Now, opposing defenses can really exploit that by putting a lot of their personnel and running a lot of their zones and whatnot into those intermediate to deep areas more so than focusing on the short. Like force Bryce Young to operate underneath, keep everything in front of you. His adjusted completion percentage was only 71.6, so that does speak to there maybe being a little bit more of that accuracy issue in that short to intermediate area, as compared to maybe other quarterbacks where drops become a different issue. His play action game was pretty good. You want to see that maybe improve a little bit. And he was an average quarterback when under pressure. Getting a C grade under pressure, that's not the worst thing you could be. That's sort of like, that's as low as you probably want your starting quarterback to be at. But when you have a lot of pressure and he does have the height differential that he has, it is a little bit more difficult for him to operate because he does rely. You saw it with Drew Brees. I think Drew Brees just had a much better processor anyway. I'm talking about like an elite level all-timer versus Bryce Young here, who's still, I think, a great quarterback, as you can see. But the thing about Drew Brees is that Drew Brees operated a lot relying on the passing windows created by the offensive line and sort of manufacturing that in the scheme and the play design and the blocking shifts and all that. And he understood where those lanes would be based on how the defensive line would line up and the stuff he saw in film about certain twists and stunts that they would run. He was able to really anticipate that, and that's something that Bryce Young, if he's going to get into that top 10, top 8 quarterback range ever in his career, he's going to have to develop that aspect of his game. It's going to be a very difficult mental aspect of the game he's going to have to develop. But he became very unafraid of trying to make big time throws. It's sort of part of his game, but it's the turnover worthy plays that early in the year weren't great. As he started to let loose a little bit, he had a couple of ones where you're going, maybe that wasn't the time to do that, but it was significantly less than you'd seen up until that point in his career prior to the benching. So overall, he does naturally have a lower ceiling on him if he just isn't able to he needs to be able to be like this, a true like high level savant. If he's not a top 5 in the league quarterback mentally in terms of anticipation and being able to identify defenses pre-snap especially from within the front 7, if he doesn't get into the top 5 in that, then this is probably as good as he's ever going to be, as this 88 grade, just hovering outside the top 10, 10 to 15th best quarterback in the league. Now, can you win a lot with that? Yes. But you need a little bit more happening around you than what he has right now. And I think we're going to see where these things need to be improved, but I think you'll be able to see the investment that this team has made to make sure that if he never gets better than that 10th to 15th best quarterback in the league, that they're going to still be in position to be a perennial contender and being able to win, because there's the team that just won last year. As a passer, Jalen Hurts is not like a top 10 passing quarterback. But they designed the offense, they designed the personnel around him where they were able to win a Super Bowl and use his skills and maximize his talent. Carolina's going to have to do the same thing here with Bryce Young in a different way, obviously, because Bryce Young's issues are not that he's not a great passer. It's just that he's a smaller guy. Now, maybe you could use a little bit more design runs because he's a great athlete. I don't know that he's currently set up to be a quarterback who's going to contribute on designed quarterback runs. I don't see that being necessarily the case. I could see a situation where they move the pocket around, get him to roll out, get him out in space, let him have some options, and then give him these bigger body weapons out there that we're going to cover shortly to use those big catch radiuses and to use his arm talent that got him to be a number 1 overall pick in the draft. So here are the weapons group that I was talking about. They are currently 27th to 29th. They're in the lower end range. Now, why is that? There's a number of reasons here behind it. I think that they got a group right now where if you said, oh, this guy's a wide receiver 4, you'd be like, this is a great group. You start with Ted McMillan, who I think is a wide receiver 1. We'll get to these other guys shortly. Ted McMillan is a number 1 archetype, and I look at his skill set and I look at the things he was able to do at Arizona, and when we were going through the draft process, I was thinking, man, if they take him, this sort of becomes their Mike Evans in this offense, which Idzik and Canales are very familiar with. When they picked him up, I was like, now they really got something cooking here. Because he does have this really great catch radius. He uses his size really well. His contested catches, he caught 60% of his contested catches for a total of 18 completions. That is an absurd number. He didn't operate well behind the line of scrimmage because that's just not who he is. He's not like this super shifty, agile player, but he is a good route runner. He works well in the deep to intermediate, which is going to really meld well with what they have in Bryce Young. I think, again, the size issue, Bryce Young able to put it up there, those high arching throws, getting it over the line, getting it over some of the players, upping the trajectory, plays right into Ted McMillan's game here. He did have 7 drops, 7.7% drop rate. I would like to see that get under 5%. That's yet to be seen. He did have some sneaky versatility, 22% almost of his snaps were taken from the slot. Having that kind of versatility, at least at your disposal from time to time, is something every offensive coordinator will love because it's going to create some serious mismatch issues. And when you have these bigger receivers, when you have, Coker and you have Xavier Legette mixed in there, to be able to put all 3 of those guys in any position on the field is going to force defenses to be much more aware pre-snap. It's going to force them to make adjustments on the fly, and that's how you're going to catch a lot of these teams, and you're going to be able to exploit them. And it's up to Bryce Young to be able to figure out where the hole is in the defense now, and for these receivers, if they're running some option routes, to be able to take the correct option, knowing where the defensive shifts are going to be coming. It takes a lot of work in the film room, but when you have all these younger guys, again, you have these opportunities to... They're never going to be more invested in becoming better players than they are early in their career. So this is a huge opportunity for this group to really grab onto them. You want to see more touchdowns from Ted McMillan. He only scored 8 on 84 catches. Again, he's not a run yards after catch guy either, but he's a true alpha wide receiver. And how quickly he establishes himself on this team is yet to be seen because you just don't know how much they're going to be passing around him, especially when you have a veteran like Adam Thielen, who still plays a role as well. Now, he was virtually a slot almost all of last year, nearly 75% of his snaps from the slot. He's a very sure-handed guy. He was pretty good in contested catches. He has a sneaky physicality to him still at this stage in his career that they can execute. My concern is because they have so many younger guys that they keep bringing into this group, how long he's going to be part of the rotation, and is he somebody who ends up being on the chopping block for a veteran release in training camp or a trade candidate to a team that maybe picks up an injury at receiver that they need a veteran presence to come in and just fill that gap. That is going to be something to watch here because I do feel like the direction this team is taking, they're not going to really want to. They want to invest in the younger guys. They want to invest on the long term for this roster, figure out who a long-term option as a number 2 or as a slot guy can be. And Thielen is just sort of here as he's like Andy Dalton to a degree, where he's like this high floor player who, you throw him in there, and if guys are struggling, you know what you get out of him. But if the younger guys are performing well, then I don't know that he sees the field all that often. I feel like around 40 catches and around 60 targets, kind of like what he had last season, is about what to expect this season. And I think that early in the year, he'll get more work than later in the year, barring injury or just these young guys not being able to perform. But I do think Adam Thielen still has something significant to offer this roster, especially because it is so young. He's going to be able to give these guys, a deeper insight on the game. I think Ted McMillan and Jalen Coker will, in particular, benefit a lot from that, because you're going to see Coker playing in the slot quite a bit. Him and Thielen are kind of like the 1-2 punch in the slot there. He took 61% of his snaps from the slot last year. Only had 1 drop, ran good routes. He's a little bit of a bigger guy. I think he came in at 6'2", which, that's a taller slot player. I think that when you see 176 yards after the catch, that's sort of a different, a possession type slot receiver, where I feel like the NFL, especially today, they love those slot guys who they get a majority of their yards after the catch, more so than what we're seeing here from Coker, which is mainly in
an out wide receiver type production from a guy in the slot. Like, not even half of his yards are after the catch, which means he's doing all that work down the field. And I think that's something that is an aspect of his game that will maybe have to change, because he's now, if he can really solidify himself as the slot receiver, it's going to be a lot easier for him to have a role on this team, because I think Leggett and Tet McMillan have sort of occupy those two outside wide receiver spots. I think there's going to be some sneaky competition coming from underneath Jalen Coker as well. And frankly, Xavier Leggett, who does come in at a 75 grade as the fourth best wide receiver on the roster. Now, I think he'll probably end up with the third most targets by the end of the year, just because I think, like I said, Thielen's production is going to go down. But David Moore's a veteran in there who had some good years in Tampa, had a good year in Tampa the year that Canales was there. There's the rookie Jimmy Horn from Colorado, who's like just this straight line speed fast guy who, as they maybe want to execute a more spread deep ball game, he could find himself a real role as well, because he's probably the best like speed guy that they have. I think that kind of locks him in for a roster spot, despite him being the worst receiver overall currently on the roster. You know, Jatavian Sanders and Tommy Tremble are going to be competing for that tight end role, but it's such a low end. They just, no one's really established themselves as a true number one tight end. It's like they have a roster full of tight end threes right now in terms of, you know, production and skill level. I think Sanders does have the higher upside here. He is the younger guy between him and Tremble. I think he's going to get the most opportunities. But it's a crowded group that is asking for somebody to break out. And I think the addition of Trevor Etienne as the running back out of the backfield, mixing him in there with Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard, that's a nice little fun backfield, at least from a weapons perspective, from a passing perspective of, you know, throwing those screens to Etienne. He can get out there and run some sneaky little routes, motioning him out into the slot and all that. Create some mismatch issues there. But for Bryce Young, you know, defaulting to a check down just out of fear or whatever, I think they have given him a better option here with Trevor Etienne in particular. And working in between the hashes is also a lot more difficult for a guy his size, which is why you get Sanders and Tremble, who maybe the theory is because tight ends are mostly operating in that area between the numbers, between the hashes, that having a high-end guy isn't really necessary for the production of this offense. You want better guys outside the numbers that run deeper down the field to better appeal for Bryce Young in particular. So they did a good job, I think, of setting this roster up to play to that skill set and to those physical traits of Bryce Young. It's just a work in progress at this point. They just need to keep working these guys in and let them develop. You know, between McMillan, Coker, and Leggett, between three players, there's 2 years of NFL experience. So, and, you know, throw Jatavian Sanders in there, throw Trevor Etienne in there, throw Jimmy Horn in there. It's an inexperienced group that has they've been positioned where they are all going to get a chance to compete with each other, and it's going to be like, you know, the king is going to emerge here. And I think it's easy to say Tet McMillan, but I would watch for Coker. Coker, Leggett, Jimmy Horn, even. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if any one of those four guys emerged as like wide receiver one on this team. There's a lot of open opportunity here. And here's the real strength of this offense. It's the running back room, and they're tied for 6, 6 to 8. There's 3 rooms here that are tied in that same area. The star is Chuba Hubbard, who last year had his true breakout season. He had that run in college where people were like, he's running back one, kind of fell off his last year there, ended up here in Carolina, and finally last year, behind trusting a really strong offensive line in the run game, he was great. he was great. They ran the zone run game really well. Nearly 1,200 yards rushing, almost 5 yards per carry. He had 10 touchdowns, 49 missed tackles forced. He did put the ball on the ground 4 times, which is a concern. They didn't go away from him because of those issues, but they did bring in, Rico Dowdle to be maybe more of an option there, where if he does run into some ball security issues, they have a quality guy there to come and fill in for him. With 62 first downs, 865 yards after contact, with a total of under 1,200 yards. That's a lot of extra work that he's doing that's really helping those numbers, and you get better play out of the offensive line. If he gets free range to that second level, he's going to hurt a lot of defenses. He wasn't great in the passing game. He hasn't been great in the passing game. As you guys saw previously, he's the number 3 running back for me in terms of that. But I think that they can also slowly work him into that. Just as a basic screen pass guy, get him out in space, let him, beat a linebacker. He's proven he can do that as just a turnaround, hand the ball off running back. So theoretically, that should be a huge part of their game as well, utilizing Chuba Hubbard coming into next season. I did like the Rico Dowdle signing. I think he's going to be a good number 2 back, a good complementary back in there, especially because, unfortunately, Jonathan Brooks just can't get healthy. 2nd round pick last year, missed all the season. Basically, he's going to miss all this season. I don't know that he's ever going to get on the field. I don't know that he's ever going to be the guy that he was sort of projected to be. When you have Hubbard, you have Dowdle, now you have Trevor Etienne. They have Imani Bailey in there as well, and a number of other undrafted free agents or guys that are veteran free agents out there that could come in and fill this role. I don't know that Jonathan Brooks ever gets the opportunity, unfortunately. But he is a good body to have in there if he does get healthy, and then he slowly gets worked in there. But I think Chuba Hubbard has really separated himself and established himself in this league, where Brooks, if he sticks around here, the best option he has, the best opportunity he has, is to be a number 2 back, and we'll have to wait until the 2026 NFL season to figure that out. But for right now, really strong 1-2 punch here, complementary skill sets, and then being able to mix in the real change of pace guy like Trevor Etienne, especially in the passing game. This makes for a very exciting backfield, and when you have a quarterback who is still trying to figure stuff out, when you have a wide receiver room that's still trying to figure stuff out, when you have an offensive line that maybe overachieved a little bit last year, to have a running back room this strong and this deep and this versatile, this just really helps an offense. And I've talked about this in a number of videos with a number of teams. This type of running back play and this being able to shorten games and extend drives and it helps an offense along, and it also helps out a defense that is not good by keeping them off the field as much as possible, and it allows the defense to have more opportunities to play maybe a little bit more aggressive than they would otherwise, and help them out there, catch an offense off guard, create big plays. If they didn't have this running back room here, I'd be significantly more down on this offense and significantly more down on this team. I think this is one of those few situations, I think Carolina, Baltimore is another one where having such a strong running game is so much more effective for the way that the team is designed than a team having like a top 12 passing game. I think that it brings balance to the team in a way that it counteracts otherwise poor key position groups on the team, which this offense doesn't really have much of that at all. But I love the idea of being able to hand the ball to Chuba Hubbard 25 times a game and hand the ball to Rico Dowdle 15 times a game. And you're going to get 4.5 yards a carry from each guy. And before you know it, you might have some low-scoring games. But how effective now does the play action become to make Bryce Young's job a lot easier? Allow him to get deeper drops, get receivers deeper down the field. You've used his skill set now and his physical traits to your advantage. You've maximized that now. If they didn't have this type of running game, you wouldn't necessarily be able to do that, which would have made the job easier for opposing defenses overall. Now, this offensive line has developed really well over the last couple of years. They had a very good performance last year. They come in this season 16th in pass blocking, smack dab in the middle, 12th in run blocking. Just a good offensive line. Good, balanced offensive line, reliable offensive line with guys who are still developing certain aspects of their game. And one of those immediately is Ike Ekwonu, who at left tackle is a very, very good run blocker. Still looking to develop the pass blocking aspects of his game, which was always going to be the aspect of his game that needed the most work when he came in. And being able to use him and develop him over the last couple of years, you're hoping that now is the year he takes that next step and he gets into that, moves up a tier in terms of his talent ability, because he did take 12 penalties last year, gave up 7 sacks, 39 pressures on 593 snaps. It's a lower end. I think he's still starting quality in terms of being a pass blocker. He's just towards the lower end of the league in that aspect. And if he was playing guard, he'd probably be an upper class guard just because of how good his run blocking is. But the pass blocking really needs to come back into play here for him. It really needs to be a focus of his offseason. I'm sure that it is. It's always a focus of any offseason for any tackle on either side. And being able to work off of a veteran like Taylor Moton as well, I think is very advantageous for him moving forward. Now, the other advantage that he has is that the depth tackles that this team has aren't a competition for him in terms of what his skill set brings, despite the fact that Brady Christensen last year was absolutely phenomenal. He gets a 67 pass blocking grade for me, 84 run blocking, which is both less than Ike Ekwonu, and makes him a lower tier player from a right tackle perspective than Taylor Moton. So he becomes like this swing offensive lineman who I think can also play some guard as well. But having that versatility and that upside that he showed last year, hoping to be able to build on that in a weird way without him being a starter. That's a tough place to navigate from. They also have the same issue there with Cade Mays, who, another versatile guy, can play all three interior offensive line spots. I feel like he is direct competition for Austin Corbett. I think he's a better overall player than Austin Corbett, but Corbett right now projected to be the starter. I think it's because they're just valuing the pass blocking a little bit more. And Corbett is a better pass blocker than Cade Mays to some degree. They also got Jarrett Kingston, who I think is a good pass blocker as well, not much of a run blocker at all. And the rookie Luke Kandra, another interior offensive lineman. Really good pass blocker, loses out on the run blocking a bit. And I think when it comes to guards, you see Robert Hunt there, a really good run blocker, sort of bottom end pass blocker, but you'll see him and Corbett working those double teams together. And Damian Lewis is going to be the guard that sort of lives on his own island here. 616 pass blocking snaps last year, took 6 penalties, 6 sacks, 16 quarterback hurries, 24 pressures. A low end pass blocking performance, low end starting quality pass blocking performance. Him and Ike Ekwonu, these are the guys you want to see take that next step. Now, Damian Lewis has a lot more years under his belt playing. I think he played 4 years in Seattle, and he's going on like year 3 here in Carolina. So to expect like the second half of his career, like renaissance development, maybe a little bit unfair here, but he's still a really good guard, like a true number one guard on a team. He's not like a Joe Tooney by any means, or like a Quentin Nelson, but he is rock solid, and what he brings in the run game is also really good. An A- zone blocking, run blocker, and that's what a majority of their offense is going to be in terms of the run game, is going to be the zone blocking. 62% of his run blocking snaps last year were zone. So you hope for a healthy season from him, where he can continue to build on what he showed last season. Just a quality player here. We talk about Corbett and Robert Hunt here, and then there's Taylor Moton, who he is, he's starting to there was a point in time where Taylor Moton would have been considered one of the top right tackles in the league. I think that time has sort of maybe gone by a little bit here. He only gave up 1 sack last year, took 1 penalty, 538 pass blocking snaps. Wasn't the target, though, of the best pass rushers. Wasn't really the target of anything complicated in terms of blitzes and twists and stunts by the line, that confusing thing. A lot of his pass blocking snaps last year were pretty straightforward against the number 2 or even number 3 edge rusher on the opposing team, which the fact that he put out the statistical output, very good. If he didn't put out this statistical output based on the competition he was facing from individual teams, I'd be much more concerned. But it's hard for me to grade him all that high when it really was Icky and Christensen and all those guys getting bombarded by the best pass rushers the opposing team had to offer, getting all the blitzes, all the complicated defensive line fronts, and post-snap movements and all that. So he's still having him just another solid foundational player. Is he going to be better than this in his career? Probably not. But to have him and Damian Lewis as these guys that you got, it helps raise the floor of this offensive line and it really helps out the offense. And to have this veteran presence in there who can sort of be a coach on the field as well for a younger guy like Ike Ekwonu, who can sort of guide him and stuff and help him out in real time. I think that's important to have as well. He doesn't really have a great run blocking pedigree here. He's best utilized as a gap zone blocker, and that's not what Carolina runs. So that, if he can develop that aspect of his game, sort of late in his career, that would certainly help. I wouldn't expect it. So I don't know if the effectiveness that he can have in the run game will be truly beneficial for this team. It's going to be a tougher situation for them to get the run game going to that side. He does have a lot of help, Robert Hunt. But the left side of this offensive line is where the running game should be best suited. It's where your best blockers are. And I would watch out for the competition of Cade Mays and Austin Corbett for that center role moving forward this season. Especially if Cade Mays gets completely on par or even surpasses Corbett as a pass blocker, then there's really nothing that should be holding Mays back from taking that spot. So overall, this is my 8th ranked offense. They are a top 10 offense for me. How about it, Panthers fans? How about how highly I think of your offense coming into this year? This is a top 10 offense. They have all the right pieces that fit the scheme all the right ways. This is just great. And as they improve as an offensive coaching staff, as they improve their weapons group and develop that, there's no reason this team shouldn't have a significant output. They're going to be a really exciting team to watch on offense, all things considered. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But are we good now, Panthers fans? Are we good now? Because we're about to go to the defense, and oh boy.
Now the real star of the show, the one that's going to get me in the most trouble, I think, in the comment section here, the defense at Giro Evro's defense, and we're going to start with the defensive line, and yikes.
Princely Umuna Malayan was drafted to be the star. They cut Jadeveon Clowney, so it was very obvious they're going with the youth movement here, which I get it. I don't know if I could really argue it all that well. But Umuna Malayan is the better of the two rookies in terms of pass rushing, at least. He was 8th in pass rush win percentage last year in the NCAA amongst eligible players. 464 of his snaps outside. He only took 1 snap from not inside, not completely outside the tackle. So, the size and the speed, you want to see him develop some pass rushing moves there. Hopefully become a little bit more versatile. He had 28 hurries, 16 hits, 55 total pressures. He had some buzz as being like this late first round pick because people liked his traits and all that, but I think he settled into a more effective draft position, more realistic one for his skill set. I think Carolina really benefited from it. I put a bet on him winning Defensive Rookie of the Year just because I think he's going to get every opportunity on the field. He's going to be on the field a lot this upcoming season. especially when, they got some interesting depth pieces here, like Patrick Jones. He's going to be like this early down guy. I feel like him and Carlos Basham will be like these early down edge rushers for them. And then you'll see Uman Malayan and Scorton come in for the straight up pure pass rushing situations. And I think that's going to keep this rotation nice and fresh. Now, you would like to see them, unfortunately, between Princely and Scorton, you got to give it time, right? A guy that doesn't need time is Derek Brown, who was injured for most of last season. So these are his 2023 numbers where he came in last year, going into last season, just because I didn't want to put like no numbers up here for him. 30th in pass rush win percentage. You had 41 pressures, 938 total snaps as like a 3-4 eye tech for most of the year. Maybe you want to see him play more as a nose tackle, but they did bring in Ashawn Robinson to maybe play that role more. And even in the run game, he was 5th in stops percentage amongst interior defensive linemen, only a 4.4 missed tackle rate. So he was latching on to guys and not letting go. Really effective in that aspect as well. He's their best defensive lineman coming into the season, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. You just want to see how he bounces back from some injuries here. It's always hard to project what that would be. On passing downs, his complement is going to be Tershawn Wharton, coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs, I believe, from last year. A really good interior pass rusher. Against the run, just brutal. But that's why you have Ashawn Robinson. That's why you have Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown, a really, really good early down interior run stuffing defensive lineman. I think you'll see a lot of him part of the rotation as well on early downs with Ashawn Robinson. And then Wharton will come in in passing situations mostly. I feel like Princely and Scorton and Wharton are going to be like your just straight up, that's your pass rushers, true pass rush situations. That's when those fresh legs are going to be brought in. And then Patrick Jones, Derek Brown, Carlos Basham, Ashawn Robinson, Bobby Brown. That's your, first down group. That's your second and short group. That's those types of guys. But Nick Scorton, again, a traitsy player. Again, just like Princely, they took these two traitsy edge players. With Scorton, you would like to see him have succeeded more with his pass rush win rate. He was 48th in college football, so still a little bit more to go for him in that sense. He had a little bit more versatility at Texas A&M than Princely had at Ole Miss, but still just a pure outside the tackle, 7 tech, maybe put him in 9 tech and see how he works with it there. But just, it's going to take some time. He's another one. It just takes time. He has to develop pass rushing moves. He has to, master speed to power and just become a more well-rounded player. And that, unfortunately for Panthers fans and this defense, is going to take some time. So, but he has enough skill to come in and be a situational pass rusher early on. Again, I think Princely probably gets the most snaps out of between the two of them, just because he's better early down run defender. But it's an open competition again. This is another room. This is kind of like, it reminds me of the wide receiver room to a huge degree, where they've put some investments in there and they got a little mix of veterans, some young players in there, and it's going to be really an open competition. Nobody really has a role locked in other than Derek Brown. So there's a good 5-6 other players who will get some playing time here as part of the rotation. That it could be any number of these guys getting the higher snap count. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. But unfortunately, just when it comes to high-end talent, they're 30th in pass rush, 25th in run defense. It's it's just the unfortunate nature of having underdeveloped players currently. But it's not for a lack of effort. It's not for, it's, again, like I said, this is the group that Evero really needs to dial in, focus on, get these 2 edge rushers up to speed, and scheme up the rest of these guys, these more veteran players, to fully utilize their talents. Because you see 84 grade in run defense for Brown, 75 in run defense for Robinson, 69 for Wanham in pass rush, 76 for Basham in run defense, 73 for DJ Johnson in run defense. So there's some bodies in here where, a little bit of TLC could get them to the next level and help out this overall defense, because this defense is going to have to pick up for a lot, because the offense is going to put them in positions to succeed. And so they need to make sure that they hold up their end of the bargain despite the lack of current talent and current development that they have in this front 4. Now going to the linebackers, rounding out the front 7, 15th to 17th in pass coverage, 31st in run defense. A tale of two personalities here. I like Trayvon Wallace's performance. I wasn't very high on him when he came into the league last year. I thought that it was a bad pick. He turned out to develop into just about what they were hoping, which is a good pass coverage guy. He's not a great tackler. That's why he gets low on the run end. 89th in stops percentage amongst eligible linebackers. He was only targeted 28 times. He gave it 23 catches, 138.2 passer rating. But he moved around really well in the zones. I will say that. Was able to put some pressure on when he blitzed. But I do like that he wasn't targeted all that much despite giving multiple opportunities. So he did execute those middle zones pretty well. But from a linebacker perspective, you need to really focus on the run game. Josie Jewell sort of did the exact same. He was a bit more of a splash player in the passing game. He would have these great moments, these great pass breakups and interception, but then not really execute in terms of his tackling, on catching up to these crossing routes, identifying when they were coming his way, picking up on the tight end option routes. It was a more bipolar season for him than it was for Trayvon Wallace. He was 39th in stops, but still it just wasn't, he didn't significantly outperform Wallace in the run game either, which, they were the worst rush defense in the league for a reason last season. And this front 7 is a huge reason why. Now they got Christian Rosenboom from the Rams, who is the best run defending linebacker on their team. Now, with that said, he's still not great at it, so he doesn't necessarily raise this linebacking group up all that much. So they need to develop that. I think Trayvon Wallace has a huge opportunity to develop that aspect of his game. Josie Jewell sort of is who he is at this stage in his career. So that 3-man rotation at linebacker, they're going to give opportunities for somebody there to establish himself as a true linebacker one. I think right now, just from the veteran perspective, Josie Jewell has the green dot, even though I would rank Trayvon Wallace as just slightly better than him overall as a linebacker. I think Wallace, from an athletic profile standpoint, is projecting to be the most exciting of the group. I will say that. Now the part that's going to make Panther fans completely crash out, the defensive backs. They are ranked dead last for me in pass coverage. 4th against the run. Look at that. Look at that. Are you guys happy now? Maybe a little bit? No? Okay. It starts with JC Horn, who gets a 78 grade for me, an A against the run, because he does play a very aggressive brand of football. In man coverage, very sticky. He was absolutely horrific in zone coverage. 9 pass breakups. He allowed 6 touchdowns. on 70 targets and 38 catches. So he had a good, target to catch allowed ratio. I will say that. The yards he gave up were playing in zone coverage and having to, the man stuff, 98.3 passer rating. He took 12 penalties. That's the thing that drags it down his grade, is that he does play super aggressive, but it does come back to bite him in significant ways that he needs to start dialing that down a bit. And that comes with more practice, more development from the coaching staff. So Ronaldo Hill, the DB's coach, and Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator coach, get with this guy, work with him, because he does flash really good stuff, but it's just not consistent enough by my estimation to give him a significantly higher grade, because in man coverage, he's good, but he's, again, like I said, taking too many penalties, getting burned, hit and miss type of a player here. Then you get who is cornerback number 2. And talk about having an open playing field. Michael Jackson Sr. came over from Seattle, where he had some good seasons. Did not replicate that at all. Shao Smith-Wade, maybe just too young, doesn't have the upside. Caleb Evans, doesn't have really the upside. Shamar Bartholomew, MJ Devonshire, who is this next corner here that's coming in? Who's going to be the guy that's going to step up and be the number 2? Because if you don't have that, then JC Horn, with how aggressive he plays, you're not going to be able to swing a safety over top of him to help him out on these number 1 guys. And he's not an island corner. It's just not going to happen. It's just not happening right now. It could become that, but he's just not that right now. Sorry, Panther fans. It's not a thing. He's too sticky and grabby, where he's going to get beat and he's going to cost you significant yards. You need one of these guys, one of these young developing players, or even a veteran like Jackson, to truly establish himself as a number 2. Now, you look at the safety group. The safety group has some competition coming in there. Lathan Ransom was drafted this past season out of Ohio State. He's got that strong safety role. Not a great in pass coverage, but he'll step up, be an 8th man in the box for you. And it's sort of the same thing with Trevon Merrick, who is just a better version of Lathan Ransom, but he's not somebody who's going to be able to play that deep third very effectively. He's a hard-nosed tackling guy. Gave up 5 touchdowns, only had 3 pass breakups, only took 1 penalty, but you look at his slot and box snaps, significantly outweighed his safety snaps, his true safety snaps. So he's just not going to be in that position where he's going to be that guy. Now you have Nick Scott, who is supposed to be that guy. He is the best coverage guy out of the 3. Personally, I like Damani Richardson better than Nick Scott, but Nick Scott is written in right now as the starter. I would want Damani Richardson being my deep third safety. He's the best coverage guy out of the 4 safeties that they have. But is he significantly better enough? Nick Scott's got maybe a little bit better range as an athlete. So it's just a really tough group to project on the back end who's going to be the starters and who's going to be the complement to JC Horn. And if JC Horn goes down like he has in the past, then you're a really hopeless group here. I am astonished, truly astonished, that the only significant addition that they made in the draft to this defensive back room was Lathan Ransom, who's not known as this high-end coverage guy. That they added Trevon Merrick, but he's not a high-end coverage guy. It was very surprising, especially because they had to know coming in that their pass rush from their front 4 in particular was going to be very hit and miss throughout the year. A very underdeveloped group that would need more help on the back end while they sort of got their sea legs and their professional football legs underneath them. They just didn't go about doing it that way, and that's going to be a significant issue for this team for most of the season, especially when you got teams like Tampa that's going to throw the ball really well. When you got Atlanta that is going to commit to the pass more. Now they've gone to Michael Penix and they've gotten, London and Mooney and, Bijan Robinson. When you look at the schedule that they have, we'll touch upon that as well. A tough schedule. As the league just continues, even though the running back position, quote unquote, has come back, the league is still very much a passing league, and when you got this front seven mixed with this kind of coverage on the back end, you're asking for trouble. And this is why I just feel like this is such a black eye on what should be a much more exciting team to project into this season. And they are my last ranked overall defense in the entire league. 31st against the pass, 31st against the run, with the 24th ranked defensive coordinator dead last overall. It's a brutal group. This is a tale of two very different looking sides of the ball, and this is going to be, take the overs. I'll say that. Take the overs. The one advantage that this team has is that they have the 28th ranked strength of schedule. So I would give them over in the wins. They're going to have a lot of high scoring games, like I said. But you look at how they start the year, at Jacksonville, at Arizona, they're winnable games. They can compete with these teams. Atlanta, at home, they can compete with Atlanta. New England, Miami, Dallas, the Jets. Really, it's Buffalo, the road game against Tampa, the road game against Green Bay, and the road game against San Francisco. They are the ones that make you go, okay, yikes, this could be bad. But they drew some very good home games against Miami, against the Rams, against the Seahawks, where if you told me those games were on the road, I'd be a little bit more trepidatious, but they draw them at home, and they have 4 games on this schedule where I go, these are for sure wins. They'll definitely pull one against Atlanta. They'll pull the home game against Dallas, and then the 2 games against the New Orleans Saints. Getting the Saints after the trade deadline, that's a great draw as well. I think if you drew the Saints, especially the Saints away game earlier in the year, within like the first 5 weeks, I would probably lean towards that being more of a push game. But to get them in the second half of the season, once the trade deadline's gone by, the Saints are going to be well depleted and well on their way into like that mid-season rebuild mode. That's the time you wanted to play them. So to have 4 guaranteed wins and to have all these winnable games, especially in that first half of the season, I think this team I think they can get to 8 wins. 4 guaranteed wins, and then to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, to have 9 games that I consider to be a push. You win half of those games, you got 8-9 wins right there. I think it's very realistic for this team to get that many wins. Now the issue becomes, like we talked about with the defensive side of the ball, because they are so poor on the defensive side. Jacksonville and Arizona. Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter. Do they get picked on by that group? Is that group going to come out with enough chemistry to really blow up this pass defense? That's going to be interesting to see. Arizona, that has a really balanced pass offensive attack. What does that look like? Catching Atlanta at home, I think they can beat Atlanta at home. They can go toe-to-toe with Atlanta because Atlanta's defense is not very strong either. So I think having a more established offense with a more established quarterback, more experienced quarterback, especially this early in the year, I think Michael Penix will still be going through his growing pains there. That's something. New England, what's Drake May look like? Miami, you got Tyreek Hill, you got Jalen Waddle. That could end up really going either way. The New York Jets, what does the Justin Fields offense look like? Is the defense going to be able to step up, make some stops here? The Rams late in the year, Matthew Stafford, always known to pick up an injury at some point, miss a couple of games late in the year. Is Puka Nakua's personal issues going to be a distraction? Tampa, you catch them at home, same sort of thing. Can you compete with them? I think this late in the year, on the offensive side, your offense will be a lot more cauterized. You might be able to compete with them, especially on your home field. Same thing with Seattle. Seattle, what's that passing attack going to look like? With Darnold, with all that, you don't really know what that offense is going to look like. So somewhere in there, in those yellow marked games, there's 4 wins. There has to be. Even if there's 3, you're still looking at over 6.5 wins. So bet the over on the Carolina Panthers. And they are my 22nd ranked team, 27th ranked head coach, 8th total offense, but dead last defense, which inevitably drags them down significantly enough where, again, schedule-wise, 8 wins is not out of the question. Above 500 record, not out of the question. However, if the offense does fail to perform, then it could turn into a longer season for the Panthers. So that is something to watch. I think that they should look into the free agency, the veteran free agency market for some guys in the secondary and the defensive line, maybe some linebacker depth as well. Add some veteran help, at least guys who you feel comfortable getting significant reps during games. I think that will help this defense out, raise the floor a bit there. But they're so significantly in last place in that aspect, and it does drag them down to 22nd.
And there you have it, my number 22 team in my 2025 NFL Deep Dive Series, the Carolina Panthers. You guys made it this far. I really appreciate it. Thumbs up the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. There's plenty of videos still to come. 20 more teams. 20? I think we're in the top 20 now. If my math is correct. It's always hard, 22. Is it 32? Whatever. Thanks for coming. I'll see you guys next time.